at Westminster, where volunteers are learning the work of decontamination. There are, of course, other aspects of anti-aircraft work in which there is a call for volunteers. At the Mansion House, London, an anti-aircraft gun is on show, and the appeal for territorial recruits for the anti-aircraft divisions finds a quick response amongst city men. But don't let us be satisfied with these pictures of the other fellow coming forward. We have had a shock, but it is so easy to slip back into a sense of false security as the reaction to a shock. So here's Sir Samuel Hoare again.
Come along to help us to make your country and your homes as safe as we can make them.
Is this preview of London's balloon barrage?
Another form of defence against the threat from the air was the barrage balloon.
Laying above the clouds at 25,000 feet, the balloons will force raiders up to heights where accuracy in bombing will be difficult. They will act as a wall over which aeroplanes must climb or become entangled in the cables.
Meanwhile, on the ground, one countermeasure against the bombing was the Anderson shelter, which had been designed by Dr. David Anderson. It would sustain almost anything but a direct hit. 14 sheets of corrugated iron, 6 feet high, 4.5 feet wide and 6.5 feet long, formed a strong shell, which was buried to a depth of 4 feet and covered with at least 15 inches of soil. The shelter could accommodate up to 6 people in dank discomfort because it was liable to frequent flooding.
£70 will construct a garden dugout, that is, providing you build it yourself. At the warning of Mrs. Matthews, the children scamper for the shelter, which was designed by her husband so as not to spoil the look of the property. It can be proofed against gas and will afford protection against everything but a direct hit. Cost, elephant iron sheet for roof, £1, timber corner posts and cross pieces, £1, wood lining for walls, 10 shillings, 3 bags of cement, £1, earth or sand free, and the brickwork is a luxury. An emergency exit is provided, and the children use it in normal times as a playshed. For the time being, war is very much a present evil, and it has become inevitable, even in peaceful democracies, to accustom children to the use of gas masks. How long ago is it since a picture like this would have been either abhorred or ridiculed? But today, the education of small children in methods of self-preservation is recognized as a humane proceeding. Though war will probably not come over Czechoslovakia, it still remains a ghastly spectre on the international horizon.
Well, I just remember mine. I don't remember having to put it on other than the test, but it was the standard Mickey Mouse gas mask, a little red thing, and we were tested for them. And we never liked wearing them, of course, but they were restricted.
Pretty awful, because it was this sort of box, like a cardboard box, that we had to carry around, and it was a bit claustrophobic, you know, not very nice.
But it wasn't all gloom and doom in 1938, as gas masks and decontamination suits could be worn on special occasions.
The latest in uniforms for wedding ceremonies are, of course, decontamination suits. It had to happen, I suppose. Crossed shovels form an arch for this ingenious pair of lovebirds undertaking the first hazard of matrimony. You may think air raid precautions rather a grim subject for lightheartedness, but it's a British characteristic to laugh at trouble. Mr. and Mrs. Clements of Gillingham start married life with a good blowing up and go off to their honeymoon in a gas school omnibus.
In spite of Hitler's assurances, he was still hell-bent on invading the rest of Czechoslovakia.
Herr Hitler's demands for Sudetenland have been met by British and French intercession, but he is not content to gain them by agreement. He feels he must force them home by immediate occupation of the areas.
But at this moment, I see nothing further that I can usefully do in the way of mediation.
Those are the words of Mr. Chamberlain. Unwilling to abandon hope, the Prime Minister sent Sir Horace Wilson to Hitler with a personal letter for the German Chancellor. Desperately, he worked to prevent catastrophe, acting with the support and agreement of his cabinet colleagues and driving frequently to Buckingham Palace to consult the King. Meanwhile, the new order of things had been accepted by Britain's teeming millions. Notices appeared urging men, women and children to attend at certain addresses to have gas masks fitted. You and I, who responded to this request, found ARP volunteers administering to our needs with an efficiency as obliging as the barbers and gentler than the dentists.
Over the head. Thank you. Now that's your fitting a medium type of respirator. Would you mind taking it off from the back over the head? Thank you.
Millions of gas masks had been concentrated in city depots, and even while the fitting was still proceeding, there came the order to distribute them. So the gas mask comes into our life. It has been a grim year. 1938 will not be very gratefully remembered. All the triumphs of Hitler, his annexation of Austria, the crushing of Czechoslovakia, it has been a year of crises, and we can hardly ignore them. But it has also been the year of the Lambeth Walk, and we may be grateful to Lupino Lane and the other pioneers of that dance phenomenon, which has helped to preserve our sense of values. For even gas masks and ARP have been unable to still that undaunted "Oi!" Agree with his policy or not, there is little doubt that dramatic events made the British Prime Minister the outstanding figure of the year.
Chamberlain came back with this piece of paper, and we were happy that it was going to be no war, and we were sorry for Czechoslovakia and all that, but what we realised afterwards, it could have been stopped before if we'd have been firmer.
And it seems clear that we have run into a fresh era of history when the civilian's home once more becomes his castle. Therefore, amid trenches, dugouts and refuges, respirators and decontamination suits, yes, and ARP kennels and ARP prams, let Movietone express the wish that somewhere, by the grace of Providence, you may find prosperity, plenty and peace in 1939.
Early in 1939, the first of the Anderson shelters were delivered.
They're unloaded from the stations for delivery to householders with incomes under $250 a year. Above that limit, householders may buy them. Our old friend the horse van helps to distribute them. Unemployed men will help to erect them. Meanwhile, the call to national service has gone forth. The postman is delivering the handbook at your door, and perhaps you're standing there wondering what you can do. Well, if you're a young man, you can join the Air Force. The aeroplane has revolutionized warfare as surely as the invention of gunpowder changed it in the Middle Ages. It's in the air that countries need young men today. In one unit or another, you can get trained while keeping your civilian employment. It's all in the handbook. If you're an older man, you can become an anti-aircraft gunner, or you can join a balloon squadron and help to force raiders up to heights where precision bombing of cities is impossible. If you're a woman, you can join the Auxiliary Territorial Service and undertake work which will relieve men in wartime for sterner tasks. And whether you are man or woman, employed or leisured, you can join the ARP or the Auxiliary Fire Service and learn how to protect yourself and save others from the worst effects of bombing raids.
Early in 1939, fire services were authorised to start recruiting men and women to take part in the Auxiliary Fire Service, and they were engaged and given a uniform but not paid on the understanding that should hostilities break out, they would come on full time and would be required to serve as members of the fire service, and the rates of pay would be £2 a week for women and £3 a week for men.
The call